Hello, I'm Trish from Sew Totally Trisha. Last week I launched my first bag kit from Untitled Chapter, and it's this bag here with the dandelion design on it. It's got pockets at the side, on both sides, and comes along with the needle case like this with 4 partitions, a couple of pockets, a little bit of felt for popping your needles in, an elasticated piece there for say seam ripper, chalk marker, and then also a little zipped pouch, an accessory roll. So we have the zipped little pouch there which you've got your bobbins in, machine feet, and little recess under there for tucking perhaps packs of needles in, and then little channels for also popping say a seam ripper, a small pair of scissors, and that just wraps up like so with a little bit of elastic to go around. Then there's a little pin cushion, a little bit different to usual because it's got soap in there which oils your pins nicely and keeps them from rusting, which is really good. And then a little zipped pouch, fully lined, quite a sweet little thing. So I designed all of these items, and then I had a printer of fabrics, printed all onto a panel which was available through Hochanda last week. I do have a full set of instructions which came along with those who bought the kit, but I do have them available now from myself like so, and it's got all the instructions whether you bought a panel or whether you want to use your own fabric, all the sizes, and there are step-by-step photograph instructions within as well. But I thought what I would do is actually do a little video to help you along if the instructions aren't enough. So let me just get myself in place so that you can see the machine working itself. Now I'm using a different colour fabric, as you can see, and the first thing we needed to do was cut all the pieces to the measurements given. And we'll start first of all, here's the long piece, and I've already put some wadding behind it. Now what was used originally was the super stiff wadding, which is fantastic. This one is slightly different, quite good, but not as good as the super stiff. And then there's 2 side panels as well, which I've also put the wadding behind. And what I've done, I've stitched about 1/8 of an inch around the edge here just to hold it all together. I usually use the fabric spray adhesive, which is quite good, but I do like to, around the edges, put this little basting line, so the longest stitch you have, just to hold it all together. Saves having to unpick when things haven't gone quite to plan. Now at the sides, you saw there were pockets. Oh sorry, I've cut out the lining pieces as well. So in actual fact it's just 2 pieces and a third is the main piece. So I've cut all the pockets out with a lining. There are 2 of one design and 2 of the other, and all I'm going to do is put the fabric right sides together, and I'm going to stitch along just one top edge. So I just line that like so, and if you get that all lined up accurately, it will all go together beautifully. Now I like to use a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and that is throughout unless otherwise stated in the instructions. So we'll just stitch along there, and then the second piece as well. I've just used calico as a lining, but it would be quite nice to use a printed design of any cotton fabric, just so that the inside of the bag looks as good as the outside. So straight along, just one long edge like so. So there's the one, and I won't go, I'll just finger press that along the top on both of those. Save me getting up to go to the iron. And then what we'll do is press that back. There's my finger there. And again, if you line up the raw edge of the fabric at the bottom with the lining, you know then that you've got the seam right at the top there, and it's fully opened. There we are, that's lovely. So that's fully opened along there. So I'm just going to top stitch I do probably about 1/8 of an inch. Sometimes I'll do a longer stitch. You could in fact do a decorative stitch, which would look rather nice. But these are going to be on the outside of the side panel, so if you're just aware that it will all be seen. Just finger press that along there as well. Just get that down. That's nicely lined up, so I'm taking that one away. I'll put the other one under, and again about 1/8 of an inch from the top and straight along. Okay, so we'll get my side panel here, which, as I said, I've already top stitched around the edge, basted around the edge just to hold them together. Now here you have a choice in that you can have one pocket at the bottom and then the second one just that goes behind it, or you could pop it the other way round. My preference is to have the same fabric as the side panel at the bottom, purely because it distinguishes between the layers there, so you can see the side panel, then a pocket, and then another pocket. So the first thing I do, because one is underneath the other there, I'm going to measure 2 inches from the top here. I'll just use that on the machine, usually got there, and then this side as well, or use a measure. And then we're not going to do that yet. We're going to do that in a minute, because what we need to do, this pocket that's going to be here needs to be turned to under so that we can stitch across, because we don't want a hole in the bottom of the pocket. So I'm just going to take that back and put right sides together. Line that raw edge again. Just do a 1/4 inch seam allowance along here. That's it. And then take it back to the right side. So on just this one piece, you will need to stitch with the right sides together on both of the long edges, so that we've now got seamed edge at both edges. I'm not going to top stitch that one, just press that down there, and I'll do what I just did and mark 2 inches from the top, line that one up, and 2 inches there. That's pretty straight. And then if you want to put a pin in there just to hold it, and then I'm just going to stitch along the bottom edge here. So this is all going to be hidden, not that we don't want it to be our best stitching, but just stitch across there, and that gives us the base of our pocket. Okay, so now we're going to pop the one at the bottom, so we'll line the raw edges up at the bottom there, and I'm going to put a pin, because I am going to also anchor that. I'm just going to pin it so the bottom edge is all lined up and the side edges. There. And then I'm going to stitch all the way around that outer edge from the top of the pocket here, all the way down along the bottom and up the other edge. You can do it without. I'm also going to use a bigger stitch around the edge, but it just saves, I mean, it might be absolutely spot on first time, but it just saves you having to unpick, because when you're coming to stitch the whole of the thing together, there might be a little bit that is not, the fabric and the wadding might be slightly out, and you'll see there's a hole, so you have to go back to stitching again. So across to there. This side, and so here just about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, because it's going to be hidden in the seam. Okay, so pins out. You see that wasn't quite lined up, so I'll give that a little trim off there, and the threads away. Okay, so now I have 2 pieces ready to go. So I just pop that down there for a minute, because we're now going to work with the main piece. Now the main piece requires 2 bits of stitching first of all, and we're just going to stitch the same distance as the pocket is from the top edge to the middle, and I'm just going to stitch across there with my same coordinating fabric, my cream, and that is going to just give us a nice crisp crease. Now again, with the stiff wadding that I used previously, that actually worked beautifully and gave a nice fold as opposed to just being a rounded edge. So I'm just going to stitch across here. So I'm just going to do both at the same time. It's just easier to do it now than when anything else is in place. There we are. So you can even see that that just gives a nice crease to it. It squares the edge off. So I'm now going to get my side panel, make sure the pockets are the right way up, and I'm going to place right sides together with one of the edges of my fabric here. So here's my pocket, here's the top edge of the fabric, line that up and stitch all the way down. I can leave a little bit, sometimes I leave about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, but otherwise just go to the bottom of the side panel. So I'm going to stitch here with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and I will reverse at the top just to hold that securely, and straight down, just hold that there, and I'll reverse a little bit there as well. Okay, so now I have almost like a book flap here. Now I'm going to go to the opposite edge here, and I'm going to take the other pocket piece and I'm going to place that on there. So I've got the flap, and then I'm going to place the other side panel right sides together. I'm going to turn it to the other way so that I can see better what I'm doing. And we're just going to stitch again with that 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, first at the top and down the side here. Now if any of those pockets that I stitched down hadn't been stitched down, you can see now where it may very well have not caught, it could have slipped to the side. Okay, so now I have 2 pieces attached here. So what I'm going to do now is bring this bottom edge up, and I'm going to put one side, you see here, to this side. So I'm getting this little hole at the bottom, but this is my piece that is going to stitch to here. So again, I'm lining the edges here at the top or the bottom. It will be the top edge when we've joined it all together. And that is also going under the machine, reversing and carrying on down. Now by all means put as many pins, or binding clips are really good when you're using the foam stabiliser or the stiffy wadding, the super stiff wadding. Get near the bottom, just reverse off and stitch. Okay, so that's one piece together there. Now we're going to take the other end here and close that off there. So lining those top edges up again, push that down, just lining that carefully. The more care you take to line it up, the better of course it's going to look when it's finally all together. So here. Now if you have a needle up-down facility, a button you can press, so that when you stop your needle stays in the down position, it's always a handy thing to have. It just makes life easy when you're going around a corner, keeping the needle down. It means that your fabric doesn't move out of the way. Okay, you can see that now. Got my pockets at the side here. So all I've got to do is something with these bottom pieces. Now you can see how great this pattern is because we don't have to put a separate base piece in. So what I'm doing here is I'm squashing that piece down to that piece there. So I'm lining up those edges and I'm squashing it centrally, and actually I will put a pin in here just to hold, and then when I start it's not going to slip, and I know that is there. So I'm just going to stitch across the bottom piece here to create my base. And how easy was that? That's a little bit thick there, so if you can lift your presser foot that little bit higher, it just catches and starts stitching along. So again, 1/4 inch seam allowance. Across that rocky bit, and stitch, and cut rather. Right, then to the other side, this is the bottom, another gap, and I'm going to swivel it round that way. I'm going to press those bits down, so I've got that just in the centre there, line up those raw edges, pin just to make sure that's in place, and press that, flatten that down, and pop it under the machine. So I reverse, as this is going to be the corner point at the bottom of the bag, it's good to have a bit of reverse stitching there, just to make it nice and secure, and you don't want holes in the bottom of the bag there either. And reverse off. Okay, so we can now turn the bag to the right side. And I always check at this point, those last 2 seams we did, I'm going to poke out into the corners, and you can see at these corners where the stitch line is as well. Poke that out there, just to make sure all the fabric is caught, because it's easier to correct it now than once you've got the lining on. Okay, looking good. So there's our main outer. The next thing is our straps. So as usual, there's no secret about the basic 4-inch wide straps. So I got my piece of fabric, however long you want it to be. Then we fold it in half with wrong sides together and iron the crease mark. Open the fabric out, put the raw edges into that crease and press it on both sides, and then fold in half again. So you've gone down to a 1-inch wide strap, but it's nice and strong. Now, one little tip I always stitch first of all, it's the side where the 2 folds go together. So I also increase my stitch length up to 3.5, 4, something like that. And then I stitch here about 1/4 inch in. And I use, I don't know if you can see, I use my fingers either side just to make a channel for it to just flow through. So as you get more, well, for those experienced people, you'll probably do this anyway, but if you're new to stitching, it's just a way of getting a nice straight line of top stitching on your straps. And the other thing I do, so here's the needle down, I don't cut the threads here, I just stitch round that end, because that's going to be hidden in the seam allowance anyway. One more stitch. It saves having those threads to trim off as well. So now I'm going down, and I've got my fingers from both hands forming a channel just for that to flow through. I'm not holding it down, but I'm putting my fingers against each side of the strap and just allowing it to run through at whatever pace you like. See how quick that was? Okay, and then nice straight stitching along both edges. So I've got the other one done. All we need to do now is to pop the straps against the side of the bag and pop a pin in there. Okay, let's see if I can get that a little bit closer. And just make sure it's not twisted, but we want it to be the same distance from the other side. So what I'd like to do sometimes is just fold that bag so the seams match, and then I'm looking at in here, I'm going to line up the other strap to that side, and then when I peel that back, it just saves me getting a tape measure or a ruler to measure it, and pop a pin in there just to hold it. Okay, check also that the strap is not twisted, and then facing the other side, I'm going to put the other bag on, so the other strap on the bag. So again, I'm just lining up my side seams and putting that together so that I can then take one of the other strap or the other strap and line it up. There's that one. I'm just going to line that one with exactly where the other one is placed already on the other side, and give a pin in there. And without twisting that strap, I'm going to find the space for the other one, lining those seams up there, holding that together and just placing it to match the strap that's the other side. And the other thing I also do, I've only put one pin at the minute, but I like to put 2 pins purely because it stops it shifting when we come to put the lining onto the bag itself. So I'll just pop the other one in that side. I wish I could have my own little studio. Well, this is my studio for when I do classes, but it would be nice to have a big set-out studio with a wonderful camera that just moved around whatever I'm doing so that you can see properly. Okay, so we've got our handles attached to the side edges there. Let's pop that out the way for a moment. Then we're going to take our lining pieces, and as I said earlier, I've just used some calico, so there isn't any right or wrong. Well, there is a right or wrong, but you can't see the right or wrong side with what I'm doing. So I'm going to take my side panel, and again I'm just going to pop it to one end, and I'm going to stitch down. So it's very similar to when we constructed the bag. I'll do a little reverse there, stitch one side panel down the side, down the edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, reverse off there. Then I'll take the other side, and at the same end of that long piece, I'm going to put the other side panel, right sides together it would be if there were a pattern on there. And we're just going to stitch down here. Now the only difference with when you're doing the lining is that we need to leave a gap. So this one is only the second seam we're doing. So we shall have 3 seams that are exactly the same as when we did the outer, but the 4th seam will be when, well, so we've got the 2 there. The 3rd seam will join exactly the same as before, so right sides together. And the 4th one we need to leave a gap. So sometimes I like to leave that gap in one of the seams, either the first one I do or the second one. It's just that sometimes when you're having fun, you forget about leaving the gap. And if I think about doing it on my second seam, I've got 2 more chances if I forget to do it on that one. That's the way I look at it. Here's our 3rd. Okay, so it's this seam where we bring them together. Okay, so there's one side seam. Here is the last one. So this one I'm going to leave as big a possible gap because we've got quite a large bag to come through there. So I've done that first little bit, then I'm just going to shoot that down. I'm going to leave a good 4-5 inch gap there. So I'm reversing as I begin and as I finish. Okay, so last little bit, you see my gap there? Got my gap there. I've now got the bottoms that I need to, again, flatten out and line up centrally along there. Just fold that around there. Okay, so that's all nicely lined up. Pin there as well if you would like to. And I'm just going to stitch totally across the bottom and reversing at each end as well. And And then around to the other side, and again flatten that out and centre it. Being calico, this is a little bit stretchy, but using a firmer fabric, a firmer cotton, oops, that will all just line up beautifully. Just straight across there. Okay, so we leave our bag now, or the lining, the wrong side, so you can see the seams at the edge here. We'll leave that exactly as it is. Just going to take that off. And then all we need to do now is pop the main bag into that lining fabric. So we are, in effect, we are putting right sides of fabric together. So we can squash that up and pop that inside all the way around, and then push my hands in there because I want that to go right down to the bottom. And the main thing we need to do is just line up these side seams. So where the side panel meets on the lining and the outer fabric, and pin that. Actually, I've done that wrong, it's not there. The side panel is here. Squash that the wrong way around. There is my side panel. The side panel with the pockets on, and the straps need to go tucked inside. It's quite difficult to see there. But what I'm doing is lining up that side seam of both the lining and the outer fabric with the pockets on. So pop some pins just to hold that. Move that around to this side and line that one up. Pin. Binding clips are really good here as well because you've got the bulk of the wadding, the foamy wadding I've got here, or the super stiff, which is really good. And I've also got the straps tucked well out of the way down here. So I like to also then, where the straps are held in place here, I'll actually repin those. So I take that and pop it through the lining fabric as well. That just keeps it all nice and secure for while you're stitching. So in there, and you can also make sure that your handles are nicely positioned as well. See, that fits nicely across there, the lining and the outer. And again, there's the handles. There's the handle there. The last one, in fact, what we'll do is start there. So, if you have a free arm, you can take the accessory tray off your machine and then we can stitch. So I like to have that bag underneath here. So I'm going to take my stitch to a normal stitch length, and I'm doing the 1/4 inch seam allowance again, and I'm just starting anywhere along the top of the bag. And I'm going to take the pins out as I go, but by having the free arm, it means that you can pull the bag and line up the lining and the outer fabric along the top there. Just sticking a bit so that fits beautifully. And when you come to a seam, they can be a little bit bulky, just take it a little bit slower. And here I'm coming up to my first handle, my strap. So I do also like to, so let's just line that up. I can see that's gone a little bit crooked, that's better. I do like to go across where the strap is, so I'll go across it and then I reverse so that I've got 3 rows of stitching, just to give that a little bit of stability. What you'll find, how did I take that pin out? Okay, what you'll find if you make to sell, which I didn't say, but you can make as many bags and any of the other accessories, as many as you like to make and sell for your own profit or for charity, whichever you like. But you do want them to be nice and secure if you're selling. You don't know what somebody is going to carry in their bag, and just to give that extra bit of stability, just in case they're carrying quite a few bags of sugar, which would fit in there, but they just weigh very heavy. So again, I'm just coming over there and I'm just going a little bit slower. Just coming up to, and you can see me taking the pins out. I know I go on about taking the pins out, but I have a friend who went over the pin and it did mess her machine up. She needed more than just a new needle, so beware. Okay, I'm just going up to the next one as well. Just take that pin out and all the way round. Okay, so not difficult and also not slow. So I've just found my hole in my bag. I'm going to put my hand in, squeeze the outer bag together, just coax it out. I like to sort of go around where the lining is and just pull a little bit back, and as I'm pulling the bag itself out as well. Okay, so there we are. There's our handles, a few straight ends to trim off, and just this, just check. So while you've got the lining out, I also like to put my fingers into those corner points just to make sure that they are all with no holes. That's it there, lovely. So one other little point now I would say is when you're doing the lining, I just put my fingers in and roll that. Well, I'd normally take it to the ironing board, but I'm just going to put my fingers in there, make a little seam, a creased finger pressed seam. Turn this round to the other side, and then here again, just use my nails just to crease that along. If you've got a nice crease or an ironed fold there, it just goes back together so much more easily. So I hold on to the seam, and then you can press those folded edges together. I've just stitched that down here. It's the final bit to stitch, apart from the top stitching around the top of the bag, which you don't have to. I did, but you don't have to top stitch around the top, but it just gives a nice neat finished look if you decide to do so. So I'm just pulling those those finger pressed folds that I showed you, and I'm just getting as close as I can, and reverse there as well, just to secure. And then what I also like to do is pull it apart, you see, just so that I know, yeah, that is all stitched the whole way. So just trim that little bit of thread off there. Okay. And then tuck the lining into the bag. So this is where I said the top stitching, or if you see how I did this one, or I've left this at the minute, you can leave part of your lining fabric, making it look like an edge you've put onto it, like that. Or, as I said, pull it down, I go to the ironing board and get yourself a nice, press that nicely around the top edge, so that you can then go in further and top stitch around there. But a nice easy bag, big enough to take a fair amount of craft items, paper crafting, knitting, hairdresser's bag, whatever you'd like it to be. So thank you for watching. If you want to be the first to see any of my my new videos, please subscribe with the button below, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.